The Power of Psalm and Introduction, Part 2. The history. The Psalms, which come under the title of wisdom books, might have been compiled around 1200 to 200 BC. The very reason Septuagint has translated the book in Greek is evident the work was completed before 200 BC. Some of the Psalms were written before the exile, probably around 200 to 800 BC. A few were written during the time of exile between 800 to 500 BC, and the rest of the Psalms were compiled after the exile between 500 to 200 BC. The numbering of the psalm. Because of varying tradition about the unity of certain psalms, the numbering of them is quite different in the Septuagint and the Vulgate Latin Bible as it is in the Hebrew Masoretic text MT. Actually, the Psalm 9 and 10 in MT is presented as one Psalm 9 in the Septuagint, and similarly we have Psalm 114 and 115, which is presented as one Psalm as 113 in the Septuagint. That is, the Septuagint contracts Psalm 9 and 10, and later on Psalm 114 and 115 into one Psalm each. The composition of the psalm. The hymnal is usually a collection of hymns and songs written by many different people over the course of several centuries, basically an anthology rather than a work of a single author. The individual composition, many authors of entirely different backgrounds brought together in a single volume by one editor and editorial board. It is not possible to trace each step in the process from the composition of the individual psalms to the compilation of the Psalter as a whole. Nevertheless, a number of clues have survived concerning the various stages between the composition and the compilation. In summary, from one can trace four stages in the process. A psalm is composed, it is linked together with other psalms to form a small collection. Several small collections are brought together to form a larger unit, and the current book of psalms emerged, being a collection of collections with various individual psalms added by the editor or editors of the final book. The many psalms have the lay David mentioned in them, so it is basically not actually written by David. Some of them are attributed to David. They could be assigned to somebody to write for David or to David. Authorship. As has been noted, the psalm titles contain a variety of different types of information. Majority of titles include some kind of reference to a person or persons. The persons clearly named in the psalm titles are following, that is David very frequently, Solomon in Psalm 72 and 126, Moses Psalm 90, Asaph 12 times, and the fifth one is Heman the Ezrahite, Psalm 88, then Ethan the Ezrahite in Psalm 89, and the sons of Korah 11 times. And the musical director, choir master, is mentioned more than 55 times. Sons of Korah, Asaph, Heman, Ethan are from the family of Levi, and David had appointed them as official chanters of the sanctuary when he organized the divine cult in 1 Chronicles 6, 16 to 32, 15, 16 to 24, and 25, and 2 Chronicles 20, 19. There are 5 sacrifices which are read in the psalm: the burnt offering, Psalm 47 to 8, meal offering, Psalm 40 verse 6, peace offering, Psalm 85 verse 10, sin offering, Psalm 40 verse 6, and trespass offering in Psalm 69 verse 4. 13 psalms are called messianic psalm. The eschatological nature of some psalms. The 3 ministries of Jesus seen, that is prophetical at his first coming, Psalm 1 verse 2, priestly now in heaven, Psalm 110 verse 4, and the kingly ministry when he will come again in Psalm 98 verse 6. There are total 150 psalms. The psalm attributed to Moses are 1 to David, 73 to Solomon, 2 sons of Korah, 11 Asaph, 12 Heman, 1 Ethan, 1 and Anon 49. Anon means anonymous. Psalm 90, the oldest of all the psalms. Out of the 49 Anon, Jews consider 10 of Hezekiah. Psalm 119 of classical work after 22 Hebrew letters. 150 days are days of judgment of the ungodly. Days of flood, that is up Genesis 7 to 24, down Genesis 8 to 3. Days of the plague by locusts is Revelation 9, 10. Many of the psalms have the word Selah used in them, almost 71 times in the psalm and 3 times the book of Habakkuk chapter 3. Many have differences in opinion based on this word. Some call it a pause, others a repetition or the stage of a stroke, playing with full power, bending of the body in obeisance, a short recurring symphony. In general, can we think of a pause for a change or giving stress to the thoughts of a hymn? The tunes used in the music. Psalms are hymns or songs having tunes. At least 11 tunes are seen in the psalms. We have the Gittith, that is Psalm 8, 81, 84, a musical instrument used in Gath, a vintage song to be sung in tune of the march of the Gittite guards. Mutala Ben, Psalm 9 means die for the sun, probably a familiar melody. Shemi E Neth, Psalm 6 verse 12 is the pitch of an octave, name of a scale or tune, or the number of a string of instrument. Next tune is Alje Leth Shahar, Psalm 22, Hind of the Dawn, tune of Hebrew poetry. Shoshan Neem, Psalm 45 and 49, the lilies, an instrument resembling a lily, a familiar melody symbolical of the contents. Shushan E Dut, Psalm 60 and 80, same over as Shoshanim. Al-Amot, Psalm 46 means maidens, a tune used in joyful times, 1 Chronicles 15:20. Mahalat, Psalm 53 and 88, mournfully to chant in sickness, anxiety, grief related to sadness. Jonath E. Li Rahokim, Psalm 56 is silent dove of them that are afar off. Al-Tashit is Psalm 57, 58, 59, 75, typical and special Hebrew melody. Jedu Tun is Psalm 39, 62, 77 is a special tune ascribed to him in praising. When you cannot find the context, even the tune helps to understand the life situation, like mournful, joyful, or vintage song. The Hebrew instruments that are used. Musical instrument of three types. We have string, that is harps and psaltery, wind, pipe, flutes and horns, and percussion, that is timbrel and tabret. Niji North means playing on a string instrument. Psalm 4, 6, 54, 55, 61, 67, 76. Nehi Loth is playing on the wind instrument. Psalm 5. Hebrew instruments are trumpet, psaltery, the harp, timbrel, stringed instruments, organs, cymbals, high sounding cymbals. Psalm 150, 3 to 5. Order in the court of David, 1 Chronicles 15, 19 to 21. Division of the book of Psalms. The main structure of the book of Psalm has 5 parts of 5 books. Book 1 has 41 Psalm, book 2 31 Psalm, book 3 17, book 4 17 and book 5 44 Psalms, and each of these books end with a doxology. Psalm 1 to 41 can be showing the humanity. Psalm 42 to 72 can show the deliverance. Psalm 73 to 89 shows the sanctuary. Psalm 90 to 106 can show the reign of God, and Psalm 107 to 150 shows the word of God. The analogy is that book 1 represents Genesis, book 2 Exodus, book 3 Leviticus, book 4 Numbers, and book 5 Deuteronomy. The content in book 1 is personal, the content in book 2 is devotional, content of book 3 is liturgical and historical, content of book 4 is general, and content of book 5 is prophetical and natural. The doxology in book 1 is Psalm 41, 13, book 2 Psalm 72, 18, 19, Psalm book 3 Psalm 89, 52, book 4 Psalm 106, 48, and book 5 Psalm 150. The main theme throughout the psalm, we worship God for who He is and what He has done. The key verse is Psalm 19, 14. Christ in the psalm. Christ is anticipated, portrayed, and prophesied in such images as the coming King, the Redeemer, the loving Shepherd, and the righteous sufferer. Another division also shows the same thing as the previous one. Book 1, the number of psalms in each book, the doxology verses, and then the first part is adoring worship, second part is wandering worship, third book is the ceaseless worship, fourth book is the submissive worship, and fifth book is a perfected worship. And then the book has a likeness to the Pentateuch, 5 books, that is Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The authors of the first book is considered David, second book is David and Korah, the third book is Asaph, and the fourth book is Anonymous, and fifth book is again David. Possible stages of collection. First book is original group by David. Second and third book is added during the reigns of Hezekiah and Josiah. And the fourth and the fifth book is miscellaneous collection compiled at the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. Another division of the book of the Psalms based on the authors David, Korah, Asaph, Anonymous, and David. The main compilers of the first book is David, second and third book Hezekiah, and third and fourth and fifth book is Ezra and Nehemiah. Again, we show the likeness to the Pentateuch, the benediction verses. The span of authorship is 1000 years, and the date of compilation of the first book is 1020 to 970 BC, second and third book 970 to 610 BC, and third book until 430 BC. Another division of the book 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 based on the authors and the number of psalms in each book. But the basic content of the first book is songs of worship. The second and third book is hymns of national interest, and the fourth and the fifth book can be anthems of praise. The likeness to the Pentateuch is again Genesis, man and creation is book 1, Exodus, deliverance and redemption is book 2, Leviticus, worship and sanctuary is book 3, Numbers, wilderness and wandering is book 4, and Deuteronomy, scripture and praise is book 5. Then we see the closing doxology, the possible compilers, the dates of compilation, and the span of authorship. Another important division of the books based on the authors, the number of psalms, closing doxology are the divine names. The divine names in book 1 are Yahweh 273 Elohim 15 times, book 2 and book 3 use Elohim 207 times, Yahweh 74 times, and book 4 and 5 Yahweh 339 times and Elohim 7 times. Then we have the possible compilers and the date of compilation. So the division is based on 5 books and a certain number of psalm with the doxology as the last verse of that particular book of the psalm. When we compare the 5 books to the book of Pentateuch, we can say Genesis is way down, that is sin. Then Exodus is way out of slavery from Egypt. Leviticus is way in to the sanctuary, and Numbers is way through, and Deuteronomy is way over. Another comparison will be book 1 is the fall of man, book 2 is deliverance, book 3 is entering back into worship, book 4 is a life in the wilderness, and book 5 is the worship with praises. There's progress in thought and worship. First book is God who is the help. Second book, God is one who works miracles. Third book is worshipped in holiness. Fourth book, who is highly exalted. And fifth book, who is alone worshipped. Another possible division is the book 1 is introduction and David's conflict with Saul. Book 2 is David's reign as king. Book 3 is the Assyrian exile. Book 4 is a reflection on Jerusalem's destruction, and book 5 is reflection on the return of the Lord and the concluding praises. Note that the major periods of the organization of the Psalms were most likely the reign of King David, King Solomon, King Hezekiah, and the times of Ezra the scribe after the exile. Structure of the Psalter, analogical to the Torah division. As per the 5 books of the Torah, so are the 5 divisions of the Psalm based on the closing doxology of each division. Psalm 41, 13, Psalm 72, 18 to 19, 89, 52, 106, 48 and 156. The 5 divisions, and the Psalm 1 to 41, 42 to 72, 73 to 89, 90 to 106 and 107 to 150. Psalms 1 to 41, the divine name of Yahweh and the phrase of David are employed in the superscription of this division. Psalms 1, 2, 10 and 33 do not have superscription. Psalm 1 and 2 were perhaps placed at the head of the final edition of the Psalter as a general introduction to all the 5 divisions. The Psalm 10 is the second half of Psalm 9, Psalm 33 later edition at Psalm 32:11 with the corresponding theme as Psalm 33:1. Because of the name Yahweh, this division is called Yahwistic Psalm, or because of the phrase of David, it is also called First Davidic Collection. This division consists David's work assembled before his death. Personal psalms in this division reflects David's own experience. Individual laments dominate this section and division. Book 2, Psalm 42 to 72 is perhaps the designation is Elohim over Yahweh. Psalm 53 is identical with Psalm 14 except for the divine names. Psalm 70 is identical with Psalm 40, 13 to 17 except for the divine names. Psalm 42 to 49 are associated with the sons of Korah. Psalm 51 to 72 except for Psalm 66 and 67 with David. Psalm 50 with Asaph. Psalm 72 with Solomon. Psalm 42 to 72 may be called Elohistic Psalms. Yahwistic Psalms are Psalm 1 to 41. They came from Judah. Besides, Elohistic Psalms came from Israel. The book 3, Psalm 73 to 89, the divine name Elohim dominates this section. According to the superscription, Psalm 73 to 83 are attributed to Asaph, Psalm 84 to 88, except 86 to Korah, Psalm 86 to David, Psalm 89 to Ethan, and Psalms in this division come from the exilic period. The fourth book is Psalm 90 to 106, where Psalm 90 is only Psalm associated with Moses in the entire Psalter. Psalm 101 and 103 are associated with David. Psalm 92 and 100 are related with specific occasion for worship. Psalm 93 to 99 are hymns which are celebrating Yahweh's kingship. Psalms in this section come from the exilic period. The fifth book, Psalm 107 to 150, where Psalm 108 to 110 and Psalm 138 to 140 are associated with David. Psalm 113 to 118 are regarded as the Egyptian Hallel and associated with celebration of Passover. Psalm 120 to 134 4 are entitled Songs of Ascent or Pilgrim Psalms. Psalm 122, 124, and 131 have the phrase to David in the subscription. Psalm 135 and 146 to 150 are called Hallel Psalms. The division contains most of the liturgical psalms. Psalms in this division come from the post-exilic period around the time of Ezra. The second division is based on the Davidic covenant. They have introduction, the righteous one, Psalm 1 and 2, Book 1, David's conflict with Saul, Psalm 3 to 41, Book 2, David's kingship, Psalms 42 to 72, Book 3, the Assyrian crisis, Psalms 73 to 89, Book 4 is retrospection about the destruction of the temple, exile, Psalm 90 to 106, Book 5 is praise and reflection on the return and the new era, Psalm 107 to 145, and conclusion is a climatic praise to God, that is Psalm 146 to 150. Psalms in the life of the community. Herman Gunkel pointed out the Psalms at the original events of the Israelites' life. For example, women sang a triumphant song of victory when they greeted the warriors returning from a victorious campaign. The three most commonly occurring genres, literary forms which are described by Hunkel, are characterized by the emotion that they express, namely joy, lament, and thanksgiving. When an Israelite was in harmonious relationship with God, he or she would sing psalms and hymns of praise to God. When God seemed distant, the Israelite expressed distress, therefore he or she sang a lament. When the lament was answered, the Israelite responded songs of thanksgiving. As Israel's cultic life developed, these literary forms underwent profound changes. The Psalms are social poetry, but they must be interpreted in the context of worship. The book of Psalms is one of the most unique books of the Bible because it is a collection of literature of praise, prayer, adoration, and meditation. If the Bible narrative material relates what God had done and the prophets report what God has said, Psalter or Psalms presents the response of the people to the acts and the words of God. The psalm addressed to God as clear from reading the opening lines of Psalm, O Lord, how many are your foes? Answer me when I call, O God of my right. Give ear to my words, O Lord, and so on. In the original, these prayer poems, psalms as man's words addressed to God, were composed for and used in Israel's public worship, first at the various shrines throughout the country, later in Solomon's temple, and then in Zerubbabel's temple and in Herod's temple. They were also used in Jewish synagogues and homes. The psalms mirror the faith of Israel. The psalms invite us to experience how God's people in the past related themselves to Yahweh. The name Psalm is designated from the New Testament, Luke 20:42, Luke 24:44, and Acts 1:20, Acts 13:33. As it has its origin in the Greek translation of the Old Testament Septuagint, which was a product of the Jewish diaspora of Alexandria in the 3rd BC, the verbal root salo has several meanings: to touch sharply, pluck, pull, play a stringed instrument with a finger, to sing to a harp. The name Psalter is a modification of the Greek Psalterio and the Latin Liber Salmorum or Psalterium, from whence comes the English title Psalter. The Greek word psalmos presumably is derived from the Hebrew term mizmor, melody, which occurs about 57 psalms as an individual title and probably signifies a hymn that is sung in accompaniment of a string instrument. In rabbinic and other Jewish literature, the book is called Sefer Tehillim, the plural of Tehillah, that is praise, adoration, thanksgiving, and derived from the verbal stem Hillel, that is to praise. Because the collection of Psalms contains so many expressions of praise to God. Why should we study the book of Psalms? We have to consider Jesus and the apostle and Jesus' understanding of the Psalms and Jesus' use of the Psalms. He quoted the Psalms many times. After the Last Supper, Jesus and his disciples sang a hymn, traditionally Hallel series of Psalms 113 to 118. In the debate with the Pharisees, again Jesus uses Psalm 110 to show that David spoke of him in the Psalms. Saint Paul and all the other apostles also mention importance to the Old Testament, and Peter also uses them in the New Testament, and his use of Psalms 16, 8 to 11 as a proof that Jesus must be raised from the dead. The Psalms are quoted more frequently in the New Testament than any other book of the Old Testament. 100 direct references from the Psalms in the New Testament. When we consider the early church, Paul's letter to Timothy says reading of the scripture was to play an important role in the assembled worship of the saints. Until I come, devote yourself to public reading of scripture, to preaching and to teaching. Many times the New Testament also mentions sing psalms and praises to the Lord. For the early Christians, practice these psalms in their homes and in their place of worship, where they came together for a hymn, a word of instruction, revelation, tongue, or interpretation. All of these were done for strengthening of the church. What kind of book is Psalms? A book of praise to assist us in our praise of God. A book of prayer to learn how to approach God and respond to Him. A book of songs to record and exemplify music dedicated to God. A book of evidences to strengthen our faith in Jesus Christ. It's a book of living to act as a training guide for righteous and the holy living. It is an inspired collection inspired by the Holy Spirit. It comes down to us because God intends for it to be in the Bible. Some instruments used in the Bible are as follows: the horn, the harp, the lyre, the cymbals, the flutes, etc.